It was a very serious incident, and to this day I'm very amazed at how well the secret was kept. My commander and I relieved the crew at November flight, and we had a hint that morning that something was going on. When I got up in the morning, a TV newscaster announcing that residents of Mulhall, North Dakota saw strange lights overnight, and they attributed it to a UFO. Well, November flight is 3 miles west of Mulhall, and my commander and I were scheduled to relieve the crew at the November flight. When I got to the base for the pre-departure crew briefing, they announced that several missiles went down at November flight, but there was no further detail given. After the crew departure briefing ended, several missileers came up to Gordon Tollerud and I and said, "Did you hear the news this morning?" And my commander said yes, and of course I heard it. And so that was a further indication that something was going on. We passed through the small town of Mulhall. It was a Sunday morning, and we looked around, and boy, there wasn't much of activity at all in that town. But we got to the main gate, got the gate opened, and drove in, and my commander immediately went to the security center of the launch control facility topside, and then I entered the rear door, and I was met by the site manager. And when he greeted me, the first thing he says, "Did you hear what happened overnight?" And I said, "No, but I heard on TV that residents of Mulhall, North Dakota saw strange lights overnight." He says, "Well, come follow me." And we went into the day room, to the west-facing windows of the day room, and he described to me this object that hovered just on the other side of the fence, security fence. And then there's some other airmen, some guards, joined the conversation. The site manager described this object as bright flashing lights. They were so bright he really couldn't see much detail at all. He waited there with the lights off in the day room and watched this thing for quite some time. And then it started moving toward the north and settled just behind the main gate of the facility. And the facility garage inside the fence partially blocked the view of the object. As soon as we entered the capsule, we looked at the launch control console situated at the far end of the capsule, and we saw all red lights across the launch control console. And when we queried VERSA, voice recording assembly, and queried each missile, it spoke to us and said guidance and control system malfunction for each one of the 10 missiles. The crew departed. Gordon Tollerud and I were left with 10 missiles to monitor that we couldn't launch. And it was a thing that we'd never seen before. Normally, we could go to a launch control facility or capsule, and we'd see maybe 1 or 2 missiles off alert for maintenance of one thing or another. But we had never seen 10 missiles off alert, and it really messed with our minds because we thought, what is going on here? Especially after watching the expressions on the faces and the stuff that topside had told us. When we were relieved the next day by the follow-on crew, replacement crew, Gordon Tollerud and I went to the surface, and the flight security controller that was on duty the night of the incident was there, and I saw him. Right away, I wanted to query him. And as soon as I started asking my question, he said, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't discuss that subject." He had been warned not to talk about this ever again. And then Major Tollerud turned toward me and he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, while you were on rest break down below, the Office of Special Investigation of the Air Force called me and said that neither of us are to ever talk about this ever again. And he told my commander, as far as you're concerned, it never happened. I held my tongue for 40 years. And I started talking about this because I had been searching the internet for the previous 5 years to see if any Air Force people were talking about this. And finally, in 2001, I found a website where Robert Salas, stationed at Maelstrom Air Force Base in March 1967, had the very same identical incident where an object hovered just behind the main gate and took all 10 of his missiles down. And this was at Echo Flight at Maelstrom. This was 7 months after the incident that I was involved with. So many of us at Minot were involved with incidents, and I just found out at this reunion that somebody was involved with an incident. There are so many incidents about this. Larry Manross, Dave Schur, Val Smith, these people were involved, and none of you knew it. Even me, until 40 years later.